limits. Sorry, people keep walking by, so it keeps blocking our view. All right. Big crowds here today. You know what? It would be even easier. I'll just show you a QuickTime movie. And then we don't have to rely on our live input here and what people are about to do. And this, by the way, as far as I know, is the only stereoscopic player for the Macintosh. So I'm just going to pause this movie here. I'm going to reset the geometry. So this is how this film was shot, and obviously the convergence is on the window here. So this lamp in the background has positive parallax on it. So now I'm going to take my parallax inspector and look at the lamp, and what we're doing is we're creating an outline so you can see very, very clearly where the left and right parallax point is. And I'm going to zoom right in to have a look at it. So I can see that the separation between the left eye and the right eye is within this limit, which equals the interocular base that we're using. And in our case, in our stereopsis, we've chosen a 65 millimeter interocular base. If I wanted to be more conservative, I could bring that down to, say, 60 millimeter. Because 65 is really, that's considered the average for an adult male. But 60 is just kind of a safe place to be. A lot of other people use 2.5 inches instead of 65 millimeters. That is about 63 millimeters. So you can use whatever you want if you want to be really precise. The other thing we have here is a depth analysis tool. So I can bring that up. This is a viewing mode. So much like, you know, I'm just superimposing right now, much like anaglyph. We have black and white anaglyph or color anaglyph, of course, all the different flavors. But I can also put this on our depth analysis. And now the system is analyzing the image and it's trying to find parallax points. And we can see here that all these green points are in positive parallax and all these red points are negative parallax. If I go back into my geometry controls and I start moving my convergence back and forth, I can converge further forward and move everything behind the screen plane. Or I can converge back, say, behind the window. And now the window turns red here, which means that it's out in negative parallax. Of course, we wouldn't want to do that because we're going to have a screen violation on the edges of the screen. So that's our depth analysis. It's a really helpful tool for describing to art directors and you know, just describing to directors in general of where their objects are going to be placed on the screen. But the best way to describe to director how things are going to work out, especially once the storyboards have been made for your film, is to use a tool that we call the Stereo 3D Visualizer. So the visualizer actually started as my own custom stereo calculator. So let me just launch it here. And you can see whoever was using this last has put some settings in. I'm just going to reset them all here. And I'm just going to set 0.7 as my limit for the big screen. Okay, so what's happening here is the green area down here is representing our depth bracket. So we've got our farthest object, our nearest object, and our convergence point, and then we have our cameras right here. So as you can see, we can adjust our stereo base, our interaxial, and we see immediately the effects of everything that we change. If we change the nearest object, we're affecting the apparent distance to the audience member. And of course we can switch that back down. So let's say we shoot for the big screen. Well, now what happens when we put it onto Blu-ray? So we switch down to our home environment, and now our foreground object is only 12% apparent distance from the screen. So we see that you know, things change, and it all depends on screen size and all of the other factors when we're shooting. So this not only allows the stereographer to set up the scene and make sure he's within his limits for safe, comfortable 3D, but it's also a great communicating tool for people who don't necessarily understand 3D. So the stereographer can use this to communicate with people who don't understand it and say, you know what, this is exactly what's going to happen on these different screen sizes. The other thing that, the other feature we put in here is the estimation of the geometric similitude. So I can turn on, we're just calling it the roundness indicator. Turn on the roundness indicator, and this is affected by the distance of your object to the camera and the distance of your viewer to the screen. So our calculation is telling us that in this scenario, this foreground object, which is a round apple, is actually going to be squished. It's going to appear to be squished to this guy watching it. Now what happens when we watch this on a 45-foot screen? Well, now it's stretched. It's really stretched out. And of course, if we move this nearest object even closer to the cameras, the closer we go, the further it stretches. And right up until the point where the eyes go into the hyperconvergence condition, which means this is just something that can't be fused. So yeah, this is a really useful tool for making sure that we're safe with everything. And of course, here, back again to the positive parallax. So I'm going to put this back on 65 millimeter, and we're using 0.7, or actually we're just calculating here, based on 30-foot screen, we get 0.7. My current positive parallax is 0.6, so we're within the limit, we're okay. But now, let's say I move the convergence point closer to the cameras. Well, now I'm exceeding it, and it's going to tell me that divergence is predicted. So it's just giving me a warning, basically, telling me that, you know, this might cause a problem if our viewer is actually trying to fuse on that. They might start feeling a little bit of eye strain or brain strain. Because our eyes independently, you know, we can move them left and right. It's just doing this action that we don't do in real life on a daily basis, you know. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Now, of course, all of these settings, everything that we set in here, can all be saved as metadata. So not only can all of this data be transmitted back to the iPad on a slate, so our app shows all this data as a slate, but it also can get saved and logged for every single scene and take. So every time you hit log, we're just creating an XML, and then that translates down the post pipeline. So now as a stereographer, I know that the message has been sent down the pipeline. I want you to do exactly, you know, 0.17% of screen width HIT on it. This is exactly what I want. I don't want, you know, an editor who isn't trained just moving sliders around and going, oh, that looks good to me, right? Because it comes down to education. If you don't really know what you're doing, then you could have a big problem if that gets blown up to the big screen. And I actually walk around, I see a lot of examples of that at the show. I hate to say it, but I start watching a lot of 3D around the show, and I have to take my glasses off because it's just, I'm feeling the pain, you know? So, so yeah, in a nutshell, that's basically it. Of course, we can completely interface with our old product, which is now a new product, version 3. And we can bring all this metadata in. As well, this product is now working in real time on the new MacBook Pros. So we've optimized some code, and once we can get in there on the graphics card, we can hit play, make your adjustments, hit play without rendering, and you can see it in full frame rate. And we're showing that up at the Panasonic booth. We have a pod up there.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Tim. And if you have any questions, you can go to dashwood3d.com.